Hi, I'm Michelle Olivier, and you're listening to Hey, I Want Your Job, the podcast that looks at amazing jobs and what it takes to get them. Hey, and welcome to Hey, I Want Your Job. Today I have the very fantastic Jen Jones with me, and I'm super excited because she does something totally different and something that to me is a little bit like magic. So I have zero of the skills in her world, and so I'm excited to hear more about her job. So first of all, that was a very mysterious introduction, Jen. First question. What is your job title?
So I'm self-employed, so I can call myself pretty much anything I want, right?
Queen of the Universe. It's a great title.
Yeah. I've just chosen project consultant though, because I feel like it's informative but not too wanky. Like I'm a team of one, so I'm not going to call myself like the CEO or anything like that. That's like a little bit of a pet peeve of mine.
As a resume expert, I can tell you that's a good choice. So good job. So what do you actually do?
So my marketing tagline, if you like, is something like I help DIYs and interior designers learn how to manage their projects on time, within budget, and stress-free. So that's kind of like the face of it. That's what I promote publicly on social media, mostly because my goal is to generate resources for people who are renovating their own home or in the industry and want to upskill. But that is not currently paying the bills. So what I actually do every day is I project manage renovation extension projects for homeowners. And then I also contract to a local construction company as well. And I run a couple of commercial projects for them, just because primarily like the bulk of my career has been spent in commercial construction. So it's nice to flex those muscles every now and again.
When I say that what you do is voodoo to me, I should tell you that in my household, anytime there's a thing that needs fixing or doing, my husband's response is, surely there's somebody we can pay to do this.
Yeah.
Like, if it is more complicated than changing light bulbs, he's out. And there have even been situations where it was literally changing a light bulb and he was like, I mean, surely there's somebody we can pay to do this. So it was a complicated light bulb. And even there, he drew the line. It was a hard line.
Yeah.
So there is never a budget when we try to do something around the house. There starts with a budget. And then the budget just goes to, I don't know, if we just keep paying somebody, will they make this problem go away?
Yeah.
What we want. Which is why, like I said, what you do is voodoo magic to me, because I have no skills in any of it. So I think that's amazing. How did you wind up being a girl in construction? Because I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's not a lot of female representation in your field.
No, there's not. It's starting to grow, though. I've noticed in particularly New Zealand and Australia, I'm seeing a lot more females in the trades, which is really cool, like builders and electricians and sparkies and electricians and sparkies are the same thing, but painters, like that sort of thing. But how I got here, it was kind of no real accident. Like I always knew as a child that I wanted to be something in this field. Like I would draw floor plans and elevations of my tree huts when I was a kid. Wow. And then try and send my brother out to build them with branches and things that we found. And originally I thought that what I wanted to do was architecture, and I didn't get into architecture school.
Gotcha.
Which ended up being a blessing in disguise. I had participated in something called Young Enterprise at school. My parents are small business owners. I guess they saw a likeness there, and they sort of pushed me towards the property development side, like more the business side of the industry, I guess. So I did a Bachelor of Property, and then a lot of people that do a Bachelor of Property end up in like valuation or property management, and I was always really clear that I wanted to be involved in the projects. So there's not really a lot of entry-level jobs in that field at a university, so I kind of had to do a bit of a stepping stone thing, and I started off in infrastructure, procuring land for like public works, like motorways and tunnels and that sort of thing. And then I kind of got an opportunity to go into another large project for a shopping centre and kind of be the liaison between the main contractor for the base building, like the shopping centre shell, if you like, and then all of the different tenants and their fit out contractors who are coming in to fit out their stores. So that was sort of like my first foot into.
You have such a clear arc. Like you went from, project managing your brother and building tree houses to project managing like major construction. And I think that's amazing. Like when you were project managing tree houses, I was, well, I'm old, so probably at that point I was like in high school doing things I shouldn't have been doing. But in my youth, I was, I really wanted to be an underwater photographer for National Geographic. That would have been a terrible choice for me as like an actual human. But like, I love the idea that you have this like cohesive life vision that like you've managed to bring. At any point in any of that, were there moments where you, as a girl and then a young woman and a woman, said, I really want to work in construction, and somebody looked at you and went, oh, honey, that doesn't seem very ladylike? I mean, I live in Texas, and that's what you would get a little of, oh, yeah, bless your heart. And then they would hand you a doll or something. Did you get that? Or did your parents did they nurture this? Were they all in?
My parents have always been pretty supportive of like whatever, endeavor I wanted to take. Like, there was no real pressure to finish university. Like if I wanted to drop out or anything like that, whatever was best for me, which I think is really cool in this day and age. I'm really grateful to them for that. But in terms of, experiences on the ground, so that shopping centre project, that was kind of like my first, I guess, real exposure to raw construction and probably like deliberate sexism. But it was never like the nice, oh honey, like good for you kind of thing that you said. Like the comment that kind of sticks out of my mind is a guy who said to me, like straight to my face, no one's ever going to listen to a silly little girl like you. But that's like fueled the fire for someone with my personality. Like I was like, oh, I will show you. And that was $160 million project. And a year later, when it had finished, him and I were like best friends. So
I hope you threw that comment at him a lot as friends, because I would, if my best friend had said something like that to me, they would never live it down. So
yeah.
And I have to say that is much more gentle than what I have been told as a recruiter. So I have done recruitment for like the big international, like hyperglobal megacorp kind of builders. And like the engineering firms, that kind of stuff that go hand in glove with them. And I have literally been told by hiring managers that nobody's going to listen to a fucking girl, or they need somebody who's not going to be running off trying to find a bathroom every 5 minutes. That was one of my favorites.
Wow.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, I draw the line at using the same toilet as the builders on site, because it's like, that's pretty filthy.
That's just a separate issue.
But that's it for me. That's really the only, you wouldn't really notice a difference otherwise.
Yeah, I have heard, like, it is amazing the things that I have heard about female candidates. And I work with women who even now are, project managers in construction in the US, and the things that they have been told. It never ceases to amaze me that it can be 2021. And right.
Some of these things are still being said. Yeah. I got married 2.5 years ago, and shortly after getting married, I was told in no uncertain terms that, the likelihood of me having a child in the short term after getting married is, like, from their assessment, pretty high. So, I would probably be overlooked for promotions within the business. And I was kind of like, I credit your honesty, but like, you can't really say that. And it's a pretty shitty thing to be told as well. And it kind of just makes you disconnect from that company. As it happens, it was a company that I actually really enjoyed working for, and I'm still on great terms with them. But But there are some comments that have been made, you know, in the time that I worked for them where I kind of went, oof, like, okay, you know, this is still a thing. This is still a problem
I
in
think
the
that
industry. Well, in any industry, probably.
but I think that that's a really good point, that people think that the problems for women in business across sectors come from you have a really clear picture in your head, right, of the big misogynistic guy who's going to say, smack you on the ass, call you darling, and tell you to go get him coffee instead of listening to him. But actually, the more insidious stuff are the guys who really think that they are female advocates, but then say obnoxious shit like, oh, you just got married. Well, since you're probably going to get knocked up soon, we won't be looking to promote you. Congratulations, by the way, right? Like that sort of thing. Or my favorite is working for a nonprofit, and as director of talent acquisition, they had some kind of, I don't know, like work construction day, as nonprofits make you do things that have nothing to do with your job. And they were like, oh, no. I started, it was carrying something from point A to point B. And they're like, oh, no, that's a man's job. I was, are you kidding me? And like literally they made all of the women put down anything that weighed more than like 10 pounds and stand and wait while they got men from other things to come and haul them. And I was like, this is insane. This is the 21st century, people. Like,
it is insane, but you almost have to just like reframe it and go, cool, sweet. Like, I'll be over here putting my feet up. You guys do the hard work. Enjoy it. Like, I would help, but since you want to do it yourself, like,
now you sell out. Well, and me being a smartass, of course, my response was, well, shit, if I'd known this was how it was, I'd have brought my nail polish to put on while I was waiting. I mean, I can lean into your stereotypes. Let's go.
Oh, that's so funny. I think, that sort of example, it's just ignorance. Like, it's not, like that genuine sort of like deliberate, like there's intentional sexism. Like, it's just, they just don't know. Like, the most recent example I can think of something similar was for this construction company that I contract to, and I'm running a project in a place called Waiheke Island. So it's part of Auckland, but it's just slightly out of the CBD. So I was trying to find subcontractors on the island rather than having to pay to ferry them over, literally ferry them over every day. And so I was talking to this plumber, and like he'd never heard of the company before, and he was like, so like, tell me about the company. You like a husband and wife duo? Like, are you just sort of here to assist your partner with? Are
you the HR girl?
And I was just like, yeah, are you the admin chick? And I was just like, oh my god, like, no, like. And I get that a lot. Like, I have probably spent 15 years, well, not 15 years, 12 years, battling with the assumption that I'm the PA, like, not the person in charge. And I had to explain to this guy, I was like, well, no, this is actually, it's a small business. It's owned and operated by two qualified builders and businessmen, and I work for them as a project manager, and I'm here to run this project. And if you want a contract and you want to get paid, you need me on your side. Like,
for your purposes, I am the head bitch in charge.
Yeah.
So I think that brings up for me a kind of an ongoing battle I have with myself. Like, I get tired of fighting every single assumption about women and all of that. But at the same time, there is an argument to be made that every time we don't call it out, every time that somebody who apparently, like both of us, is a little sassy and not afraid to stand up for herself, doesn't, that then the women who are less
we're letting the team down.
And I don't know about you, but I really struggle with that feminist guilt. That I feel like I have so many guilts about so many things that this, like, 2020 was hard on all of our egos. But I think that one in particular, I really struggle about that in business, because I feel like by making my own company and not being out there and continuing to fight because I was tired, partially because I was tired of the bullshit, like, am I letting the side down? I mean, I don't know. And you're, of course, that's double, because you're in a whole industry that has massive representation issues. There are plenty of women in HR. We are not short in representation in that field. How do you feel about that kind of issue? Is it just me? Am I weird?
No, it's not just you, but like I think at the end of the day, probably what's different about my role is that I'm a project manager. So my whole thing is that I just want to get shit done. Like I'm not here to argue about, who's got a bigger dick.
Right.
I just want to do the job. So
Right. You can win dick off. In the meantime, can we please meet these following deliverables?
Just we have a milestone and I'd like to achieve it. So I try not to get too caught up in it. If I do have a lot of young women who reach out to me through social media and are looking for a mentor or like some guidance on how to get into the industry or like, how to get through it. And I think at some point in the future, I'd really like to fill more of a, like an actual role in that sort of space to help women to get into the industry or upskill and sort of fight their way through it. But it shouldn't be a fight. And I actually think that, I know there's an argument for not letting it go, but I think that a lot of the problem is actually, it's almost kind of ego. Like somebody says something to you and you get your back up, like you get really defensive about the fact because you're like, no, like I'm competent. Like it's an attack on your ability. And so it's your ego that kind of makes you defensive and want to argue the point. But actually, if you just kind of went, cool, like you're open to your opinion and show them that actually you're perfectly competent and you can get the job done rather than telling them and just getting into this argument, because that's not really, like, to me, that's not really constructive. Like occasionally I'll say something, but it's usually more of a banter in the way that I address something. I'm kind of like, or I'll like raise an eyebrow and kind of go, like, oh yeah, like I heard that, like it didn't go unnoticed. I'm not going to say anything, but it didn't go unnoticed. Like,
and that's kind of how I wound up dealing with it. And even now when I have clients that say stuff, I'll just like, oh, did we forget we were talking to the HR girl? Oh, didn't think that went through. And then they usually laugh and they're like, oh, but you're not like that. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Let's just assume that was wrong, but okay.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of zig a little bit from the rah ladies conversation.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I can rah ladies all day long. But I'm fascinated. People may have picked up from your accent that you are not from the US and that you actually are working in New Zealand, which means congratulations. You probably have a million marriage proposals in your inbox on the daily right now. I hope that your partner is really, really like on their best behavior because you have all the choices in the middle of this pandemic. But specifically, New Zealand has an outstanding reputation for being green, and you are in construction. And in the US and in a lot of parts of Europe, the construction industry is notorious for being a huge part of the non-green problem between industrial waste, between practices, the machines that they use, the materials, just, I mean, the entire pick a thing, and it's not great. Talk to me a little bit about how those initiatives impact your work and what, if any, awareness you have of how it compares to sort of the international standards for things.
Yeah. So until your description, I probably would have said that from a project point of view, we're not that different. Like we still have a lot of the same problems with wastage. And of course, we're an island, so it can't go anywhere. And I guess sustainability in general in terms of supply chain. Anything that we can source and manufacture locally has the ability to be sustainable.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, like we have a really limited local supply chain.
But you're a small island, so there's
only a small island at like the furthest point from any factory ever in the world. And also, like, not just that, but it's really expensive to bring stuff into New Zealand. So, even though we have, we can bring stuff in, actually our range of things that come from overseas is pretty limited as well. Like we don't have a huge selection pool for materials and that sort of thing. So there's definitely knowledge and awareness there. And I am seeing a lot more interest in like low VOC of sustainability in New Zealand, and much like overseas, we have our own local certification systems for building to a certain level of energy efficiency. And it used to just kind of be energy efficiency, like the operational part of the property at the end of the project. But there is a lot more spotlight on supply chain and where things are coming from and how they're manufactured as well. But we're by no means like leaps and bounds ahead of everywhere else, you know, like
you just have a really good reputation for it.
Like, yeah, well, our landscapes are clean and green because we haven't industrialized and built through all of our land. But so I think it's more of a visual clean green New Zealand kind of thing. And certainly if you compare our landscapes to some of the landscapes in parts of Asia or even Europe, you definitely you see the green. Yeah, I think though I'd probably like to see more emphasis, not to say that, you know, looking after the planet's not really important, it is, but looking after occupants is probably more important, or not more important, but equally as important to me. And I'd like to see probably more emphasis on air quality and like natural light and the sort of more wellness side of building, like building to support the occupant as well as building to support the planet, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I think, so it's interesting. There's been a lot of discussion for those of us affected by the pandemic on what that means in terms of spaces. Because we're talking about, you know, increasingly people are going to be working from home potentially forever. And so that changes the space that you need in your home. And you need like a small space with a closing door for a home office, whereas you might not have, etc. But it also has meant that there's been a real boom here and in the rest of the countries, like I said, that are actually being affected in terms of home sanitization and sterilization, like the UV systems and that sort of thing. Are you feeling any of like the trickle down for that there? Is that all the rage and the buzz there, or just everybody it's another beautiful day in New Zealand and nobody noticed?
Pretty much. Yeah, not to gloat, but yeah.
I mean, I feel like this is the moment you get to gloat. You get to have all the gloating that you don't have the problem that all the rest of us do. I think that's really interesting. I wonder what that is going to wind up meaning for, you know, home decor, especially with your interests as well in DIYing and home renovation, that right now all of those blogs and that sort of stuff that we see in the US are all about how to create a private office-like environment in your home by retrofitting. So what, in a world that isn't obsessed with that, what is in vogue in New Zealand at the moment instead of making those spaces?
I think it just extends to the rest of the home. Like, you know, just like the rest of the world, nobody's going anywhere. And so they may not be working from home, or certainly not full-time like everybody else in the world. But I think there's definitely is an increase in people working from home. But mostly there's just an increase in people renovating their homes because they can't go on holiday. So we've had a lot of young professional couples come back to New Zealand from overseas, you know, to claim free COVID-free New Zealand from, you know, their stint in London or New York or Sydney or whatever. So the property market's really hot. Like you pretty much can't buy a house right now. Nobody's selling because there's nothing to buy, and nobody can go on holiday. So they're spending all their spare money on renovating instead. So what I'm seeing, particularly in my industry, great for me, of course, is a huge influx in inquiries to actually redesign and develop their entire home, not just their home office.
That's really exciting. I mean, here, I think most of it is around creating all of the fun escapism that we get normally, that we pay for somewhere else. So I am putting in a pool in my backyard because literally I am the last of the people in my little like section of the neighborhood to get a pool. And so that has resale implications, right? Like I live in a cookie cutter kind of a higher end, but still cookie cutter kind of neighborhood. And so
Yeah.
if you have the same floor plan available 5 times and only one of them doesn't have a pool, like, well, we know which one's not going to sell, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then when we were going through that process, the builders right now, to like, if you went today to try to get a fiberglass pool in Texas, they are booking out to next March. Like, they just can't
March
manufacture them.
2022.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Because that's to get the shell, because they are that backed up in the US in terms of production,
phenomenal.
which is insane, right? Like that.
Isn't it the middle of winter?
Well, no, March is our spring, but also we don't really do winter in Texas.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Not good with geography.
Our winter means that it's like 20 degrees. So we're
right. Okay. Yeah. I have sort of visions of like, New York in the middle of winter in my mind. But of course, you're in Texas, so
yes.
Yeah.
So for us, like I said, winter means it's like, so today is a January, which is winter day for us, and it's like 22 outside.
Yeah.
And
sounds awful.
It's a hard life. It's a hard life. But
Yeah.
to be fair, in the summer, it reaches like 35. So,
Yeah.
We definitely suffer for our gains.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we're paying for it.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting that there's this focus on is it more of the interior then that's being renovated, or is there that also outdoor space renovation?
It's everything. It's
Just
the
like
whole package. Yeah. There's
level
a lot
it,
of
build something
going
exceptional.
on. Yeah. Oh, we've got a lot of like character homes in New Zealand, or like heritage homes in New Zealand, which you can't necessarily flatten, unfortunately. But they're really beautiful homes, and it's nice to embrace the original character and then put like a really swanky, well, not swanky necessarily, but like a nice contemporary boxy kind of extension on the back as a bit of a contrast. Like I'm finding, I particularly like for myself, and I'm also finding that it's quite commonly requested at the moment to put like quite a contemporary extension onto the back of something that from the street looks very sort of heritage and like early 1900s, and then there's this element of surprise as you kind of walk through the home and then come out to this beautiful big open plan kitchen, living, like dining area at the back.
Effect. Yeah,
so yeah, a lot of extensions and just full renovations at the moment, adding a bedroom, adding an office, adding a garage, that sort of thing. Just people sort of trying to make their home, I guess, everything that they want, because they know they're not going to be going overseas for a while. Like our fearless leader, Auntie Cindy, has already said that our borders are probably going to be closed for the rest of the year. So basically, if you leave, you're going to be paying for a quarantine when you come back. And why would you want to go anywhere else anyway? Like, no offense, but like at the moment.
I completely understand. Like I said, genuinely, everybody I know that has any ties to New Zealand has been like, all right, application for citizenship. How to make this happen? So no, I totally and completely understand. So with regards to all of this stuff, if you were going to pick 3 projects that nobody should try to do on their own, and if you have an amusing anecdote of a time that somebody did try with disastrous effects, double points. So 3 home renovation projects that you absolutely, this is not for you, I don't care how smart you think you are, pay somebody to do it. What would those be?
So DIY as in like they shouldn't physically do it themselves, like on the tools, or as in they shouldn't manage it themselves?
Yes, either or.
Mm-hmm. I just think that generally anyone who is a 9-to-5 probably shouldn't manage their own project regardless of the size, because there are just so many unknowns, and if you don't know the industry, you don't know the field, you just like, you'll blow your budget and your program, like, and the kind of projects that I'm involved in, they sort of start $500,000, and that's a lot of money to invest. And for less than 10% of that, I can run it for you. And if you don't hire me, it might cost you more than 10% in fuck ups, so to speak. to put it bluntly.
No, this is such an interesting point. So when my husband and I immigrated to the US from the UK, I had already bought the house and I didn't like, he had never seen it. I bought it off plan without asking permission. And yet he still married me. So the man is clearly a saint. But we didn't bring any furniture with us.
Yeah.
And so we were just going to show up at this house with like nothing, like no towels, nothing. And so we made the decision to hire an interior decorator to kind of be boots on the ground in the US and kind of get that ball rolling for us so that we would show up and have something to sit on, for example.
Yeah.
And what we found that was super surprising was we thought this was a super bougie thing to do. And of course, my family and my sister especially were like, oh my God, of course you have an interior designer. Of course you do. But actually, the amount that she saved us on the things that we bought, she more than paid for herself just in that.
Oh, yeah. Through procurement.
Yeah, because she had like special deals with vendors and also just like saved us in terms of because she got it right the first time, right? Instead of us guessing 3 times. Like she had great painters that came in and did an amazingly, beautiful job on my house the first time. And lost it and all of that. So I think that is such a really important point that people forget how much value having somebody who lives in this space professionally totally brings to a project like that.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting that you mentioned painting as well, because now that I think of it, that's probably it's something that I don't really recommend people do themselves. I think painting is one of those tasks where everybody thinks that they can do it. They think it's literally as simple as pouring some paint into a tray and like rolling it on the wall, but it's actually not. Like if you get the wrong masking tape, if you get crappy masking tape, it'll leak and you'll end up with splotches of paint on your skirting boards. Like if you use the wrong brush or roller, like you'll end up with fluff on your walls. If you use the wrong type of paint, like satin or gloss or semi or whatever, for the wrong purpose, that it can have a huge impact on the way that light is reflected within the space. If it's like a media room and you use a gloss or whatever, or like using if your bathroom's not fully tiled and you use the wrong paint, and they're like how it withstands the damp that inevitably comes with having a shower. Like there's a lot of technical stuff that goes into painting, and I think that painters maybe don't get the appreciation that they deserve. And also you really can, like, even with all the right equipment, you can roll the roller the wrong way, and like end up with lines or whatever on the wall. It's not actually that straightforward. So that's probably not something that I would recommend people do themselves. And it's probably the most common thing that clients say to me, oh, well, like when we get to this point, just pause and we'll come in on the weekend and we'll paint before you install the kitchen or before you install the bath. And I'm kind of like, if you want that,
but yeah.
Or my painter can
Plan
come
B.
into it. Yeah.
I think so. There is this like really brief moment when we were having the house painted where I think my husband was like, why are we paying this much money for somebody to use a paintbrush on our wall? And then we watched the guy on a piece of trim just with his hand perfectly straight do it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you could tell it's because he had done it 1,000 times. And I was like, dude, I'd have had to have like a ruler and some chalk, and then I would have still screwed it up and had to go back and touch up. And no, he just did it exactly right the first time. Like that is why.
Yeah.
Also, I have 25-foot ceilings, and I have no interest in being on a ladder 25 feet in the air trying to paint anything. But mostly it was just like the skill involved was incredible. Yeah. So what are things that people often think are a bigger deal than they are, that maybe that they outsource, especially for like DIY small stuff that is actually not that big of a deal to do yourself?
Great question. I'm trying to think. probably, to your point, changing a light bulb. I don't know, actually, I can't really think of anything.
Okay.
To be honest, yeah. I mean, like there are plenty of things that that maybe I take for granted. You know, like I'm perfectly capable of hanging a picture, or you know, changing a door handle, or like, you know, little things like that I think maybe some people just don't have confidence with. Like I can, you know, I can look at a wall, I can measure out where the nogs are, drill some pilot holes, you know, drill some fixings, put some anchors in to hang a coat rack and know that it's not going to fall down. But I think there are certainly like things like that people outsource because it's just a lack of confidence. But actually a couple of YouTube videos, you could probably figure it out.
So my interior decorator gave me the advice that anything that weighs more than 15 pounds, do not try to hang yourself. Pay somebody to hang. Anything that weighs more than like a gallon of milk. And this came up because I have like a 10-foot tall, I think it's 6 feet wide wooden mirror that hangs in our entryway. And I was like, you could just pop it up, right? She was like, that weighs over 100 pounds. No, we're going to get a professional to come in and hang your giant mirror, or you're going to have giant mirror shards everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, and then that was like with all kinds of other like art that I didn't even think of as being that big of a deal. She was like, we've reached the 15-pound mark, which means that we're going to pay somebody to hang whatever this thing is. And I think, I don't know, is that good advice? Would you say that's a bit low? Was she telling me that because I'm an idiot with a screwdriver and that was a special policy for me, or what's your thought?
I don't know, like I can see that she's evaluating risk, right? Like if somebody just, you know, bangs a screw into the wall to hang something on it and it's just sitting in plasterboard and, you know, it's not gripping into anything, there's no anchor behind it or there's no timber framing behind it, you are going to have, you know, mirror shards on your floor. But like, I guess to me, and I guess again, I probably take this for granted, that just seems like common sense to me.
Oh, it's common sense once somebody points it out.
Once somebody points it out, So it's probably not terrible advice, but at the same time, like I like it's something that I would do myself. Like I can't justify bringing somebody in, but it's also not somebody that I'd bring a specialist in. I'd just get the builder to do it while he was here or she was here. Not, you know, bias. There are female builders out there, but yeah, I don't know. If you're not handy, like not everybody's handy. Like we have very much a number 8 wire kind of Kiwi ingenuity. She'll be right, get it done attitude to everything in New Zealand. So you probably wouldn't even find somebody in New Zealand whose core skill is to come and hang pictures for you. I don't think that service exists.
I don't think that person, I'm not sure the person she brought in like that was all of he does in life. I'm sure he does other things as well. Yeah, no, but he was specifically like, this is like his jam. I think he works with like galleries and that kind of stuff as well.
Okay.
But which obviously I am not. So I was definitely punching above my weight class having this guy in. This is sounding bougier and bougier as I go. And I don't mean for it to. So I am, I have recently discovered the joy of the command strip Velcro guys that hold the pictures on the walls. Those are my jam, Jen, because I have horrible children and they love to rip the photos off the photo wall. And now it doesn't matter. I just Velcro them right back up and they're great. They're always slightly askew, but that's part of the charm. It's fine. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that is my like, and it means I don't have to put a hole in anything. Like it is exactly in my wheelhouse level of crafting and DIY. Do you have anything in your special box of tricks that you would say is like your go-to like secret weapon for erstwhile DIY folks? Or is that giving away trade secret?
No trade secrets. Nothing probably quite as novel as Velcro on a wall. But probably if there was one thing that I was going to say to people is if like a screwdriver is a handy thing to have. Like you always need a screwdriver for something, you know, to tighten the screws in your kitchen cabinet hinges or whatever. And if you're going to buy a screwdriver, buy a ratchet screwdriver. So what I mean by that is that a regular screwdriver, you have to turn and turn and turn and turn in one direction until the screw is tight. With a ratchet, you can turn, like 90 degrees, and then it clicks back in 90 degrees and it clicks back in 90 degrees. So, it doesn't kind of kill your wrist. So
believe it or not, I own one of those, and it is awesome. See, now you're speaking my level of DIY.
If there's one thing, it's that. The second thing would probably be a half decent measuring tape. Like a $2 measuring tape is flimsy as, like, you try and measure anything and it's just going to fall to the ground like it. Well, I won't say what I was going to say then, like a limp dick. Like, you can cut that bit out. You want a sturdy, like a nice sturdy, good quality tape measure, or just an off the shelf laser. It's quite good as well. You can get lasers pretty cheap these days, which are helpful. Yeah.
Well, we are almost out of time. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to? I know you have some book coming out, so talk to me about those for sure.
Yeah, so I've got, probably for people similar to yourself, I've got a series of...
Idiot's Guides. Are they called Idiot's Guides, Jen? Because that's where I'm at.
It's a DIYers series, like, let's be diplomatic about what we call them. But it is a 101. So like each ebook covers a different topic. So like renovating your kitchen or renovating your bathroom, or choosing windows in a new home, or a renovation or staircase or whatever. And then like a bit of an entry level thing into like engineering and heating and insulation and that sort of stuff. Those ones probably geared more towards new builds, or like quite big renovations where you're going back to the framing. But the kitchens and bathrooms ones are pretty relevant to most people. And I'm not an interior designer or a project manager, so it comes from a practical standpoint. It's like, okay, you want to renovate your kitchen. Well, this is generally the process that you're going to go through. These are the decisions that you're going to need to make at each point, and here's all the information you're going to need to make those decisions. But in terms of aesthetics, like, this color goes with that color, and that bench top should go with, this cabinetry color or whatever, sort of, I leave that up to the interior designers, or in, the age of Pinterest and Instagram.
Yeah, I think we probably got that covered. Yeah.
Aware of what aesthetic they want, like they can just show somebody a picture. But in terms of being really aware of all the decisions that you need to make and the flow-on effect of decisions as well, like understanding if you make a decision about something today, you might have to compromise on something else tomorrow because you've chosen like the most expensive thing or whatever. Like it's sort of all very practical stuff. So at the time of this podcast, they are launching today. And for all of February, I have a couple of bundle deals to get them for a slightly better price. So I'll send you the link and you can pop it in the show notes.
That sounds fantastic. And I think that's great, because I think there is so much when you have those things, just knowing where to start and which decisions you need to make first, and kind of expectation management can be really hard. I really wish we could rewind the clock about 6 months and you have one of those for pool installation, because I have learned the hard way many things.
Yeah,
in this process.
Coming. I've actually got 5 more ebooks that I'm writing. That I'm now about to start writing, and they come out in May. And one of them is all things exterior, so cladding, roofing, outdoor entertainment, swimming pools, what we call, I don't know if you call it this in America, but street appeal. So like how your house looks from the street.
Curb appeal.
The white picket fence, the nice gardens. So that all-inclusive guide to exteriors, I think it's called. That ebook will cover all of that stuff. So that's coming in May.
Fantastic.
Probably, too late for your order, but it'll arrive before your pool does.
Too late for my no. My pool, we did not go with the fiberglass pool. We went with the old-fashioned one. No. I have a giant concrete hole in my backyard that they assure me is going to be a swimming pool before March, which is good, because otherwise I think my children are just going to start playing in the concrete. Like they are so ready. It's ridiculous. That all sounds amazing. I will definitely be personally checking out the exterior one, because pools are the beginning of the list of projects. There's always more projects. So that was fantastic. Is there anything else you want to add, or that you wanted us to talk about before we sign off?
Nothing jumps to mind.
So Jen, in your experience, answering however you see fit to answer, how much do you make?
hard to put a figure on it right now because I'm self-employed. And I'm 3 months into year 2, and year 1 I was technically on maternity leave. But I can say that in my last full-time job, my salary and bonuses were around 160,000 New Zealand, which I think is about 115,000 US. So, you know, if I to derive an hourly rate from that, I earn more per hour now, but I work much less hours because I'm a mum, and just because I don't have to. But in saying that, not every hour that I work is billable either, which is something else that I'm kind of learning to manage. But certainly with the client work that I've got on this year, there's no reason why I couldn't hit that figure. So that's, you know, in year 2. So that's sort of promising, hopefully.
That's very promising, and that's very specific. It's so much more specific than we've ever had anybody answer. So that's amazing.
I think we're pretty open in New Zealand. I think we're just open about everything.
If I wasn't already ready to move, you're selling me more and more. And I think that your point about the billable hours thing is really interesting. I think that a lot of people with small businesses forget that how much I charge you for this hour. They're like, oh, for this project. They're like, it's only 3 hours of work. That's so much money. You're like, yeah, but it has to pay me for the preceding 9 hours that it took me to get this.
To get to this point. Yeah.
Really, that's my 12 hours worth of work.
Yeah. Great. Actually, my effectively hourly rate is below minimum wage. You're getting a really good deal.
I am.
And it would cost you more to do it yourself.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, thank you so much. And we will definitely have the links to all of your books and to your deals. Cool. And we'll have, if anybody wants to get in touch to ask you about women in construction or DIY or ratchet screwdrivers, they'll be able to reach out to you for all of that. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you so much for having me. It was nice to talk.
You've been listening to Hey, I Want Your Job. For more information on how you can get your own awesome job, visit ONH Consulting at www.onhconsulting.com. We offer incredible resumes, no-nonsense career advice, and real-world tips for landing a job in today's market. Check us out on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Insta for more insider information. Soon, you'll be hearing us say, I'm Michelle Olivier, and hey, I want your job.